We also heard the word sometimes science communications, and you also mentioned research communication. Is that the same thing?
I think they're two different things. Research communication is focused on the research process, and we can talk about how wide that process is for research communicators. Science communication is more about understanding the results or the impact, I would say, of science, of which is, research is a subcategory.
How should we kind of see the relationship between KT and communications?
They have the same goal, is to improve the health outcomes of people and communities. And that's something that I always try and keep in mind. But the reality is that there were communicators communicating about research and forming relationships in communities long before KT was ever a thing. And I come from a background in the HIV research community. I was a communications officer for a national research organization through the 90s. And it was very much an active practice of engaging with people with lived experience, right from what research questions we should ask, all the way through to communicating results of research back to communities. And I think we really need to think about and give credit to the activists, the HIV and AIDS activists of that era, because they were really forced research and research communicators to rethink, how that whole system worked, and that they really wanted and needed to be part of the ecosystem of research. So that reframed this whole discussion of users and people with lived experience participating and being part of the process.
Maybe something to be a little bit more clear about. We talked about research communication, science communication, and then I hear KT also has this whole research aspect. So how can you, or what are the similarities here and the responsibilities that a KT person versus a science communication professional or a research communication professional should take on?
It's important to distinguish a couple layers here of, what you're kind of asking, and what Robyn spoke really well to is, what might be someone's job title. So like when I was a communications officer, previous job at Provincial Health Services Authority, that was my job title. And the organization also had people with knowledge translation in the job title, which is great. So there's kind of the job title level, if you picture that in the middle. Maybe layered above that are the people who research those processes. So knowledge translation science, people who are researching knowledge translation at like the meta level. And same in communication studies or science communication. There's the whole science of science communication, that kind of work. And then if you kind of go down one level below the job title, then there's folks who are just doing these things. People who, like a scientist who's tweeting about their own work, or someone who's trying to do knowledge translation in the grant, or someone who's communicating about their research, in different ways. And so I think, focusing at this job title level is really interesting and highlights a lot of like organizational structures. But, those knowledge translation job titles are still pretty limited. And yet a lot of researchers are interested in doing knowledge translation or studying it.